So welcome to the lunchtime panel discussion. We're delighted to be joined here by three panelists, and Emilie Syberg from WBAA, who is going to be interviewing them, moderating the Q&A. I'm pretty sure Emilie's got some piercing and difficult questions to ask the participants. And then I know also questions will be welcomed from the floor for those who want to ask them. We'll be running here till about 12:20 or 12:25. So actually the timing for this event couldn't be any better for the mayors, since Forbes last week just named the Greater Lafayette area second on its list of best small places for business and careers in the United States. So ahead of, yes, applause is good there. That puts us ahead of College Station, Texas, who was third, and Bloomington, Indiana, at number 39. And this goes to a point I want to make about our panelists this afternoon. When it comes to leading thriving communities where businesses and jobs continue to grow, even in the face of a changing workforce landscape, in large part driven by technology, they speak from our experience. Blair Milo currently serves as State of Indiana's first Secretary for Career Connections and Talent. Appointed by Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb in August 2017, Secretary Milo serves as the state's chief talent officer as Indiana works to fill an estimated 1 million job openings in the next 10 years. Prior to her appointment, Milo served as mayor of LaPorte, where she focused on building a conducive climate for economic development. During her time in office, 1,100 new jobs and over $260 million worth of new investment were created. A Navy veteran, she earned a bachelor's degree in computer science from Purdue and a commission as an ensign in the United States Navy in 2004. Tony Roswarski was elected mayor of Lafayette in 2003. He oversees a city with a wide-ranging and strong economy and many career and business opportunities. Under his leadership, Lafayette has achieved milestones in community and economic development services, infrastructure improvements, parks and recreation, and fiscal management. He's just completed a major revamp of the Sagamore Parkway and is now eyeing a remaking of the historic Five Points neighborhood and continued redevelopment downtown. John Dennis has been mayor of West Lafayette since 2008. He's also guided an impressive string of recent growth, including major retail and housing developments, working in concert with Purdue on projects like the $120 million State Street redevelopment and the Discovery Park District, eventually to include research and high-tech manufacturing facilities, a convention center, and housing ranging from apartments to single-family homes. We would like to thank Emilie Syberg, morning host and reporter for WBAA Radio, for agreeing to moderate this discussion. Today they will present a discussion entitled 1 Million Jobs Over the Next 10 Years, How Do Employees Adapt to Lifelong Learning? Please take a moment to silence your electronic devices, but feel free to tweet using hashtag Dawn or Doom. Artists from the Ink Factory will be creating, there she is, visual recaps of the talk from our presenters, and you're welcome to take pictures after and share them on social media. Don't be afraid to chat with the artist and ask questions when she's finished drawing. Thank you and enjoy. Emilie.
Well, thanks everyone for coming today. We really appreciate it. We're looking forward to a fruitful and wide-ranging discussion, I'm sure, here. So the thing I'm going to start off with today, I was just talking with Blair about what a big term workforce development is. So if we can drill down into that a little bit. When we say workforce development, to the layperson, what are we talking about, Blair? What does that mean?
Well, and I had the opportunity to work with the Department of Workforce Development and many other entities, agencies across state government and across the state of Indiana, that as I look at workforce development and looking at the career connections and talent pipelines overall, that the piece that I see for workforce development is that we have upwards of around 85,000 or so postings right now, where we see employers who are look towards the future of how the nature of work is changing, how are we developing those talent pipelines to ensure that we are developing the next generation of a workforce and ensuring that they are connected with awareness around what types of jobs will be available and the skills needed to be able to take advantage of those different kinds of opportunities to lead thriving lives.
Okay. Another concept I guess I would also ask about, we're talking about looking at jobs going into the future. The phrase, does that work a little better?
We'll try this. All
Perfect.
right.
You sound great. Okay.
I was trying to use my Navy voice in the meantime of just project, but this will probably be better.
I guess also the phrase 21st century workforce. What kind of jobs are we talking about in the 21st century workforce?
Well, and that's a challenge and opportunities that I think many people are wrestling with. That as we look at a 21st century workforce, we see estimates from anywhere from 9 to up to 85% of the jobs that a student who's in kindergarten right now will take when they enter their workforce may not yet exist. And so when we think about what that means of that we can't know exactly what these titles are going to be of a role that someone is going to take in the workforce. What are some of the critical skills that we can develop to ensure that they'll be prepared? Things like critical thinking, problem solving, adaptability, and grit to be able to adapt to what the changing nature of work will be, and looking at how skills are becoming a key component of how employers are looking at different parts of job positions as opposed to what some of the traditional methods have been around specific curriculum that they have maybe anticipated. And so breaking down some of those different aspects that when we think about a 21st century workforce, we're going to need to have both employers and workers who are much more nimble to be able to adjust to the pace of change that we're seeing.
Okay. So if we're talking about 1 million jobs by 2025, and mayors, I will be drawing you into the circle here as well.
Okay.
What kind of industries and specializations are we looking at needing to see those jobs filled in statewide, and then what are we looking at more specifically in our greater Lafayette area? Where are we seeing need? If we're talking about 1 million jobs that need to be filled.
Sure, and right at the moment, the state of Indiana has a great program called Next Level Jobs, where we have a couple of different aspects incorporated there, where we're looking at our top 5 high-wage, high-demand areas of those being health and life sciences, business and IT, advanced manufacturing, transportation and logistics, and building and construction trades. And there's 2 components to 2 specific programs related to Next Level Jobs, where we have a Workforce Ready grant for providing 100% tuition for anybody who is seeking a career certificate in any of those high-wage, high-demand areas, as well as an employer training grant that provides reimbursement of training dollars for employers who are helping train new hires as well as new individuals who will be stepping into new higher wage positions within their areas, all again within those top 5 high-wage, high-demand areas. We also, in the employer training grant, incorporate agriculture or ag biosciences, as I understand the broader term to now incorporate because of the kind of technology that is coming forward with it. So those are our current high-wage, high-demand areas, and we're certainly keeping track of how those are transitioning over the current term and as we're seeing them project forward.
Okay. And then mayors, would you say that kind of tracks with what you're seeing here kind of on the ground in Lafayette and West Lafayette in terms of where you're seeing need?
Absolutely. I think one of our greatest issues now, I think this is going to become the pass around.
It might be.
Hope you don't have any viruses or anything that we can catch. But I think that's going to be sort of where the drum really does start beating. When you look at Greater Lafayette, you can see that we've got a very, very vibrant community now when it comes to jobs available. You can also see that we've got a very employable population base. And I'll speak more specifically about West Lafayette. When you are a university community, when you're a university town, the employment opportunities are much different. Obviously, when you're looking at some of the service jobs, for instance, Those are always very difficult because a lot of your workforce is going to be your student population. And we've got 42,000 students that live, work, and play here in West Lafayette on any given day. And some of them who choose to reside here are going to need some form of meaningful employment. And what that does mean is that we need to maintain a couple things. First off, a high quality of life, so we can not only attract great students, but we can keep them here once they get their graduation, once they get the degree. The second thing is to make sure that there are available options with the flexibility needed to maintain and retain those employees. Again, I know when I was getting my undergrad degree, I worked in an office supply store. And the reason why that was of meaning to me was because I could basically pick my hours. Whenever I was available to work based upon my class schedule, it was a family-owned business, and they would allow for me to come in and do what I needed to do. It allowed for me to have some spending money and also help develop the soft skills that are necessary in order to be able to maintain and have quality employment. The second thing is that's unique about a university town is the diversity of our employment pool. We have people from all around the world here that reside in West Lafayette. Some of that requires some special considerations on the part of an employer. When you talk about working in, say, for instance, over in Lafayette, at one of the advanced manufacturing opportunities that are over there, or working here in West Lafayette, either it be for Purdue, one of the outreach programs at Purdue, or within one of the businesses in the city, there could be issues involving language barriers, cultural barriers, other things that need to be considered when you're making sure you not only are going to basically empower your student-based population and your lifetime residents here to work, but also to make sure that the environment's going to be pro-social and supportive of those who do choose to work in Greater Lafayette. Now I hand it off to Tony.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it sounds like mine might be working. I'll let you keep it for a minute, so we'll see. Well, to piggyback a little bit on what John said, here in Greater Lafayette and in Tippecanoe County, it really is a unique situation with Purdue University and the work that takes place out in the Research Park, in Discovery Park with nanotechnology, agribusiness, all of those types of things that are associated with Purdue University. And then right across the river in the city of Lafayette, we have one of the strongest international hubs of business and advanced manufacturing, literally anywhere in the country. And so that calls for unique relationships, and it also calls for unique challenges as we look at workforce development, because the reality is, in this economy, every job matters and every person matters. Whether we're looking for people that are machinists, whether we're looking for people that are tool and die makers, or people in the IT fields, looking for engineers, or looking for people that specialize in on-time inventory, 21st century logistics, being able to move the parts, the inventory in a way that allows the advanced manufacturers to complete their processes, it allows them to compete in a global economy. So whether you're a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 supplier, whether you're an engineering firm or you're a tier 1 advanced manufacturer like GE Aviation and looking for people with aviation maintenance certifications. So we're looking for people that have 4-year degrees, 2-year degrees. We're looking for people that have specific certifications that we need to fill the jobs actually that are open now and will be open in the future. And so as we look at how we begin to address that, whether it is through the vocational tech high school that we're getting ready to open up in our community, where students from Jefferson High School, the Lafayette School Corporation, West Lafayette, TSC, everybody working together will be able to attend, or the $40 million Lilly grant that we received in the Wabash Heartland Innovation Network that we've put together now to look at as a region, how do we work together to be successful when it comes to talent retention, when it comes to workforce development, when it comes not only to filling those jobs, but to continue to create the jobs of the future that allows our companies that are here to be competitive in a global economy. And how do they have the people that have the critical thinking skills? How do they have the people that have the ability to be lifelong learners? You know, I was just talking to a business the other day, and they're thinking about expansion, so I won't divulge their name right now. But literally, their business continues to change, sometimes on a yearly basis. They're what we call a tier 1 supplier, and they supply some very big names. But the skills that their employees have to have and the adaptability that they have to have as they get new customers, those customers make changes to the product that they're selling around the world to meet the demands of their customers is significant. And so I think as we look at how we educate all the way from pre-K education up through K through 12 and beyond is critically important as we begin to move that workforce forward, fill the jobs that we have, fill the jobs that will be coming in the future, and knowing that there's not one size that fit all. And as I said, everything's important, from that person that's filling that tray or that tub that's going to SIA to do their on-time inventory for those vehicles that are moving down the line, to the tool and die maker that's making sure they can continue to produce those vehicles, to the engineers that are working there to design and to make sure that there's an efficient flow through the plant. So we really are in a phase where we need lots of people with lots of talents, lots of skills, and the ability to continue to be lifelong learners. And I do feel good that here in our community, with the work that's going on at Purdue University, Ivy Tech, within our local high schools, our talent track, like I said, the Wabash Heartland Innovation Network, that's a $40 million Lilly grant that we received, that there are a lot of things working with Greater Lafayette Commerce, our Advanced Manufacturing Week, our Advanced Manufacturing Summit, the way that we've reached out to the high schools, the junior highs, and now even the elementary schools to engage them in advanced manufacturing and look at the other opportunities at a much younger age. I think as a community, we have a lot of things in place that are helping move that needle. We're all pulling on the same side of the rope. We know what direction we need to be, and as an organization, we have to help be that tip of the spear to make those things happen.
And to that point, we really philosophically have changed. Back in the day when Tony and I were basically rookie mayors, the focus was on bringing in industry to our community. And all the tools that Tony had mentioned earlier about what we're doing now for employee recruitment, we did for businesses. Now that's sort of transitioned. Now we are focusing on our workforce and workforce development, and we're being equally as creative and obviously equally as cooperative to make sure that that we can bring in those high quality employees so they can contribute not just to our workforce, but also to the quality of life in our community.
So we've mentioned, Mayor Dennis, you specifically, can we talk about some of the range of demographics we're talking about here? What are all the different groups of people who are looking for work right now and who need to be trained to take on new employment? Because we've mentioned people from essentially kindergarten all the way up to people maybe more retirement age. And there are different challenges that face those different demographics. So does that make sense? Can we talk about that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'll speak specifically to West Lafayette. When you look at the age demographic, specifically in West Lafayette, you've got a bunch of folks that are from the age of about 0 to about 26, 27, and then we have a gap, and then that picks up again at about 50, and it goes on from 50 to eternity. So that is a pretty unique base for potential, job recruitment. The second thing is, as you look at the educational attributes of those groups, in West Lafayette, we have the third best school corporation in the country. We've got Purdue University, which is one of the top universities in the world. So what does that tell us? We're all pretty smart folks. So with that understanding, the market has to be receptive to the creativity that comes with that level of intelligence. And I'm not trying to be classist or snobby, but I'm just talking about some of the basics of job recruitment and retention. There needs to be an understanding of what some of these potential employees are able to do, and they need to be empowered to be able to do that. Now again, what does that mean in the workforce? If you have a box that needs to be picked up from here and lifted over there, what creativity can be involved with that? Well, that's difficult to say, but you can obviously allow for them to have some sort of input in maybe the business plan if they're capable of doing so. The other thing that is because we go back to that special needs when it comes to scheduling and programming. That's critical too, because when you have as unique a workforce as we do here in West Lafayette, a lot of folks here are still going to school. So being able to accommodate those needs with some specialized work schedules or some creative work schedules is beneficial as well. We also are looking now to encourage job sharing. And again, that's a relatively antiquated concept, but possibly having people split shifts in order to make sure that they can get the product completed, but also share that particular job with another person. So it not only involves creativity on the part of the local leadership, but it involves creativity with the employers as well. Then let's look a little bit deeper into our service areas. When you look at a college community, you have a lot of industry, you got a lot of research components, a lot of activity there, but we also have the service industry. We have a lot of restaurants, we have a lot of bars, we have a lot of shops that need staff as well. Creativity and scheduling and competitive wages are going to be the ones that really do empower us to provide more jobs for folks and then having the ready workforce to be able to fill those jobs.
Well, and I would jump in on kind of looking at the state perspective of demographics. There's a couple of numbers that I keep track of on a regular basis, of not only looking at our unemployment rate, which currently is at 3.5% statewide, which is a very low number that we're seeing more and more people who are working at this point, but there are challenges with just focusing on an unemployment number, that it doesn't necessarily capture the people who may be underemployed, and it doesn't represent people who aren't actively looking for work. And so that's where I also look at what is our labor force participation rate? And we've been seeing our labor force participation go up over the last few months, and we are now at 65.1% of labor force participation across the state of Indiana. And that tells me that there's more people coming into the workforce. And so as we dig into some of those demographics questions, we ask the question of who is it that's not participating, and how do we, are there barriers that are in place that are keeping them from being able to participate in the workforce? What may some of those areas be, while also understanding that more and more people are working? So are some of the challenges then that people are working, but they're struggling to be able to advance into a next level of a career path, and thinking about how can we ensure that someone is able to earn some wages while also learning what some skills may be to take advantage of these really dynamic career opportunities across the state that the mayors have mentioned are in some of the different sectors that we focus on. And we have created the Office of Work-Based Learning and Apprenticeship as a part of the Department of Workforce Development to grow more programs for both students and adults to be able to take advantage of ways to earn wages while also learning some of those next steps. That if you think of an adult who is in the workforce already, who may be working 2 to 3 different jobs in order to be able to provide for, putting food on the table for their family, they may not have the ability to stop working to be able to just get some new skills that they need to be able to take advantage of where these new tasks are that these jobs are coming forward. So developing more education programs in partnership with our employers to be able to provide those learning opportunities for people to either evolve in their current career or to gain some awareness if there's a student who is going to be entering the workforce around what these different types of jobs are, what the tasks are associated in those positions. And so that gets at some of the different demographics that we're trying to focus on, of how do we connect up different age groups, different education attainment levels that are in existence, that we know with the trends that we're seeing work come forward, that we need to have over 60% of our workforce to be able to have a post-secondary education attainment level. Some of the parts of Indiana are not quite even at 20% of their population having those levels. And so we have some considerable work to do to be able to ensure that all across the state we're able to see the kinds of success that Lafayette and West Lafayette are seeing with education attainment levels, and ensuring that we are connecting all our different demographics with the kinds of opportunities, removing barriers along the way. That one of the great conversations I had with some partners at the Lumina Foundation were thinking about, we have a lot of discussion around workforce development based upon who's at the table, but who isn't at the table to be a part of the work that needs to be done, and how do we ensure that they're incorporated with having equal access to opportunity as well. And that's where we're digging further into some of those different demographics to focus on removing barriers, creating opportunity of awareness, and gaining skill sets.
And you basically are leading into my next question was, are people aware, that you talked about next level jobs. I know you just, Indiana has embarked upon a partnership with the Skillful Network, which you can certainly also speak to. How do all of the stakeholders here, and that includes the mayors, that includes local employers and members of the workforce, are people aware that these training opportunities exist? And how do you get the word out to people so they know, I can go and be trained in this area. I mean, how do we amplify that message so that people in Indiana know that there are options for them to go up the ladder, basically?
Absolutely. Well, and I would hope that today can be a call to action for everyone in the room here to help share this message around the opportunity that exists across the state of Indiana, that we need all hands on deck to be able to share the different types of jobs that are coming forward and the great opportunities that are available, and that we are trying to get the word out as best we can across whatever avenue we can of media around next level jobs, and then the different types of programs, training opportunities, etc. But it's a dynamic challenge because there's different audiences that need to hear different parts of the message, and that's why I say we really need everybody to help get the word out on the kind of opportunity that exists, the critical need for lifelong learning to be able to take advantage of opportunities now and in the future. And I think that it's really important for us to kind of highlight some of what Mayor Roswarski was talking about, of that this is also a pre-K through beyond effort, of that there are different pieces to both the challenges but opportunities ahead for us. And the governor's workforce cabinet was created this past legislative session, where we have representation from industry and labor is the majority of the membership, but we also then have all the different state agencies that are really tied to a lot of the key workforce development areas. And some of the recommendations that have come forward recently are looking at how we can engage the K through 5, pre-K through 5 audience with looking at just kind of the nature of work, what is work, and start to expose them to some of those opportunities, looking at the 6 through 8 space of starting to explore what different industry types look like, to be able to gauge a little bit more of what some of the job opportunities may be, and hopefully in a hands-on type of fashion, so that that's a really engaging learning experience overall. And then in the 9 through 12 space, having that experience start to grow through doing work-based learning. And part of the graduation pathways coming forward will include project-based learning, service-based learning, to really start diving into what a career path may be for someone, or what it may not be, and be able to make that decision earlier, so that then you can step into what may be a better fit as you're moving through the progression of post-secondary training that's going to become more and more critical moving forward. And so we have to look at all of those different areas, and as you can imagine, there's a whole lot of different audiences involved, of parents, of guardians, of teachers, of businesses, to be a part of the equation for success, to ensure that those students are connecting up to those opportunities and the businesses are having access to the workforce that they need moving forward, so that then we have the kind of communication. And when we have those relationships that exist for students to be able to take advantage of gaining that engage, explore, and experience component, then we're able to better communicate with one another about what the opportunities are, what the skills needed are. But we still need a lot more people to be aware of how valuable these kinds of programs are, and we need to grow more of them as well, which means that we have to have more businesses thinking creatively, as the mayors were talking about, around scheduling, around providing access for their workforce to be able to put some time towards learning while they're also contributing towards the mission and needs of the companies overall.
Want me to go real quick?
Well, this is your wheelhouse, buddy, so go ahead.
Okay, all right. Well, just a couple things, and Blair touched on a few of them, so I won't go into quite as much depth on a couple of them, but I think really, when I look at workforce and people that are being disenfranchised or being left out, or however you want to put that, I think for me, it really goes back to K through 12 education and pre-K. It goes back to, how do we fund education? How do we pay our teachers? How do we realize that our teachers are the front line of they are the first cog in economic development. They are the piece that gets it started for our future, and how that workforce development grows. It's our schools and it's our teachers, and how do our kids get started, and how do we fund that, and how do we recognize that with our schools and our teachers, and also how do we look at the way that we bring kids through that process to ensure that we do open those doors of opportunities like she discussed, and that we get them those basic skills that they need. And most people don't know, but we did that this year in Lafayette and West Lafayette. For the first time, we helped fund through Greater Lafayette Commerce a camp that actually went down to kindergarten over the summer, partnered with the YMCA. They went out to Wabash National and they learned about things, and they built little things with logos. We had kids there as young as 5, Legos, excuse me. And they had to build one that would move and go to the zoo and pick up a little penguin and take it places. So we have actually started doing that here clear down in the kindergarten level. And as I talked about with Advanced Manufacturing Week, where we brought in the junior high kids, and then we went up into the high school kids that actually went out into the plants, that actually met with some of the manufacturers, went on some of those tours. And I do think that is really, really important that we have those programs in place at a very young age to get people involved, because that's where we can most affect and touch every single person just about, is in that K through 12 education piece. That's where we really have a chance to build those skills, to open up those opportunities, to present new ideas. And here in our community, the 3 governments, Lafayette, West Lafayette, and Tippecanoe County, we helped fund a program in our schools, a certification program where they're going to be teaching soft skills to kids in the schools, things that traditionally maybe you wouldn't have taught 20 or 25 years ago, about being on time, about showing up, about working together, those types of things. And we're helping fund a certification program here in our local schools, because we know that that's a big piece of it also. So, in my mind, it really is, a lot of this gets back to that whole educational process. How do we work with our teachers? How do the school corporations and businesses work together? Again, how do you have as much local control with our local school boards so we can build those programs here that we know meet the needs of our employers within our community? I understand there has to be cores for everybody, but having that flexibility to do those things, because each child's going to take a little bit different path, and how you open up those doors, things that we're doing with our coding dojos, and the work that we're doing down at Matchbox as we open up some of those new doors to kids that have never seen that, never had that opportunity before. And so it really does take a community-wide, statewide focused effort on how we align our educational processes with workforce development, and how we build those from very, very early on, from pre-K on, how those are intertwined to do those things to make our kids have those skills and talents, find out what their passion is. I'm one of those firm believers. You have to work, you have to find a job that's your passion, and that will continue to motivate you to be a lifelong learner. And for me, how do we continue to make sure we have arts and culture in our school? How do we help our kids be thinking? There's a lot of studies that show learning to play the piano makes you a better engineer. Learning those skills, I think having art, music, culture, all those things in our schools overall builds a much stronger workforce that will always be lifelong learners.
And to that point, I think it can't go understated that quality of life, when people specific to Tippecanoe County, Lafayette, West Lafayette, when they see how we are pulling on the same side of the rope here, Tony sort of alluded to that earlier. There's a lot of communities that might have multi-governmental jurisdictions that don't get along at all. And that might not be as relevant to, or at least as the folks that are looking for jobs might not be as aware to that as the employers are. And if you've got a negative environment within your community, that really does affect your ability to recruit and retain jobs. On another note, we're about ready to have about $1 billion worth of development done on the west end of our town. Working cooperatively with Purdue University, bringing some extremely high-tech jobs into our community is really something that is going to be of value to our Purdue students. And I'm talking to you guys back there. there will be employment opportunities unlike ever seen before in our community. And our hope is to make sure that before the ink even dries on your diploma, that you will have an opportunity to contribute your education, your skills, and your talent to our community. And that's something that we're very proud about. We've worked very hard on trying to get accomplished. The other thing is that when we talk about quality of life, we talk about the relationships that Tony and I both share with each other and share with our employers. We work very closely with our employers. We try and find out if there's issues, anything that we can do as mayors to improve the quality of life in our community, then to also improve that employee pool. But when it gets right down to it, when you look at how we as a community compete with other communities in the state of Indiana, we are a top tier community. And it's just not a stroke of luck. We've worked very hard to get to this point.
And one last thing I would throw in, you mentioned Skillful Indiana that I want to make sure we touch on, that we talk a lot about some of the K through 12 space and the students, and I'm so glad that Mayor Dennis was talking about talent attraction and quality of place. The other component of Skillful Indiana that we're very excited to launch, that we announced, I want to say 3 or 4 weeks or so ago, we are the second state that is a skillful initiative. That the first was Colorado, and for Indiana, it represents a partnership amongst Microsoft, around Purdue is a part of this, the Lumina Foundation, the Walmart Foundation as well, where we are developing a couple of different components that are really kind of targeting the adult space of the workforce, and the couple of components with that will be Governor's Coaching Corps, and really trying to better equip some of the coaches who can help individuals who are in the workforce already be able to better navigate what some of these opportunities are coming forward, to know what they are, to then be able to have access to some skill building experiences, some training opportunities, some of those components, and then also looking at skills-based hiring and working with some employers to try and think around, what is it that we're actually looking for in the talent that we are wanting to be able to connect up to these opportunities. That the folks from Skillful can give a great example from Colorado, where there was a manufacturer who had been working very hard to be able to hire a mechanical engineer, and they had been recruiting a mechanical engineer, and not finding the talent that they were looking for that position. Well, the folks from Skillful were able to talk with that employer and say, well, let's break this down of what is it specifically you need this job to be able to do? What are the skills associated with that? And when they broke it down a little further, it was really more of a focus on hydraulics, where they then said, okay, you don't necessarily need a mechanical engineer, you really need a diesel technician to be able to do these core components of the job. And that can be a starting point for a career for someone to be able to build into becoming a mechanical engineer, starting with some of these core skill sets that are really critical to this position. And so that's some of the work that they'll also be doing, is diving into the specific skills associated with jobs, so that we can better connect some of our adults in the workforce with those opportunities, or building the right kinds of skills that they need for our employers to connect up with them.
Okay. I think I'm going to ask maybe one more philosophical question, maybe close on a tough one, and then start thinking about if you have any questions from the audience you'd like to ask our panel. I worked on a story a few months ago about, it's now mandated by the state of Indiana, that computer science has to be offered as an elective in high schools. I believe it's by 2020. And then computer science curriculum has to be continue to be implemented in existing curriculum, so K through 8. And a principal that I interviewed for this story, this is in Covington, which is a fairly small town, about 45 minutes away from here. First of all, their concerns were, I'm kind of speaking a little bit to what you were talking about, Mayor Roswarski. How do we get a teacher to come to Covington and teach this? How do we attract someone to this smaller area? So that was one concern. But the elementary school principal said to me, and she wasn't disputing the utility of computer science or learning these skills. Her fear as a principal is my school turning into a worker factory? Are we thinking too much, or or about these students just becoming future members of the workforce? How do we keep a balance there and make sure that we're looking at like the whole child, the whole student? Is this, that was a real fear of hers, so I don't know if any of you wanted to speak to that.
I'll jump in first.
Okay, I'll go.
You
Go
can
ahead.
go
No,
after?
you go.
You sure?
I'm sure.
All right.
Who's on first?
It is me now.
Okay.
My town.
Wait,
I'll
I
go
really
first.
wanted to go.
You outrank us, don't you? Well, first off, I think you're right. It is a very philosophical question because when we talk about a holistic approach to education, how diversified does that get? You know, when we talk about computer technology, when we talk about some of the basic tenets that I wish I would have had when I was a little kid, are they part of that holistic approach to life? You know, being functionally literate with a computer and appreciating technology, I think is important for life now. I think that, you know, it used to be, you know, you had to take home ec class, you had to take shop, yeah, and it was with that presumption that those are skills that will carry you through the rest of life. Well, technology now is that skill. You know, the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic all are incorporated into that. Even more importantly, you can have satellite learning experiences if technology is properly applied to that. So I think it is a value. The other side of it is that when you look at the teachers who are teaching these now, you know, there is a learning curve. You know, how old are we? What are we? We're 15.
You're 59, I'm 58.
Okay. Anyway, because of my age, there's a lot of technical issues that I have to go to my daughter, she's in her 30s now, and have her solve for me when it comes just to trying to get my cell phone to work. And it could be critically important. I could have something die when I'm trying to communicate to a department head or something of that nature. So it's a value. Our grandson, who is now 2, is learning how to use technology as a child. And it could be just hitting a button to get a response that'll give you some information to make another choice on which button you're going to hit. It's that primitive, but it's a factor of his life now. The other thing of it is that will he then be able to participate in athletics? I mean, will he have the sports options that Tony and I had when we were in school? That's part of that holistic approach as well. So the hope is that, and I think the Covington folks are right, there are certain things now that because of where we are as a society that need to be taught. They need to be respected, need to be appreciated, and need to be incorporated into the curriculum, but not at the cost of those other things. I don't even know if they have PE programs in school anymore. Any help out there? Do they still? They do? Okay, good. Oh, so it's an elective now? Oh, okay. I wish it was the other way when I was a kid. You know, math is an elective, but you can play football and get an A. But I think when we talk about that, I think that's imperative to make sure that we have that understanding because there's a lot of market-based trends that we could teach as a standard, as part of the base curriculum that might not be of value 5, 10, 15 years from now. But when it comes to technology, when it comes to the concept of creating employees, I don't know. I think that really is an issue that could go either way. And I'm not waving here because I'm an elected guy. I think it really can be. Home ec, do they still teach home ec, or is that even of value anymore? Do they teach home ec anymore? Maybe, yes, no. Well, I had to learn how to cook when I was in school. And also, thank God, one of the guys I learned how to cook with was a fireman. So, it's true.
I believe it.
I know you do. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm going. I think that there's a lot of life skills that can be presented within a coursework, but I think that needs to be contemporary and keep up with the times, not just as the job market changes, but as society changes as well.
Yeah, I would just add that I think there is a way to find a balance between the requirements that we have and looking at the tracks that we can move kids through that line up with their passion and their skills, and incorporate then the standards and the electives to make that work. Because as I said, I firmly believe that arts and music still need to be in schools. I believe those things are important. I also don't know that not every child's going to need a 4-year degree, and we still need tool and die makers, and we still need people that can run machines and do those types of things. And so we can look at different tracks, I think, where people have the opportunity to do some of those other things that I think are important in life and create well-rounded citizens and lifelong learners and the types of people that we want to have in our communities going forward. And I think there's ways that can do it. And I think the state's working on some of those tracks and looking at ways to reduce standardized testing so we're not spending so much time testing as opposed to teaching and actually development of the child and development of the skills that we want them to have. And so they turn out being that workforce. But to say I'm too worried that we're just becoming a workforce factory, it has to be both, because whether you play in the piano or you're working at SIA, you got to eat, right? You got to work because you got to eat. So you can't leave it out of the equation. It's got to be at the forefront of our minds as we're developing these curriculums and these pathways to help people be successful. Because at the end of the day, that job that you have or that passion that you have, that talent, helps create your quality of life, your individual quality of life, which at the end of the day is what we want for all of our citizens in our communities.
And I think that I would just kind of build upon what the mayor so eloquently described about how the requirement for computer science is not about a focus of trying to create more software developers just because we see a need for that. Now, certainly that's a component that can come from it, but that computer science helps develop life skills around technology, but also it cultivates critical thinking and problem solving, which are so key to being able to adapt into whatever career path may be of a passion area for that student going forward, or being able to help their families and their children that they may have as well. And so it's a life component that we're wanting to be able to better equip our students with overall, similar to some of the different life skills that have been developed in different capacities. And ultimately to the question around, whether we're just developing a worker pipeline, that ultimately we certainly want to create curiosity and as we've talked a lot about, of lifelong learning for our students, but having the ability to apply that education is then work. And then we want to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to earn dignity that comes from being able to work in whatever capacity that may be, to know that you have earned that success, that you applied towards whatever setting it may be, and in any capacity, whether it's in a business or in an industry or in the home or in your neighborhood, in the community overall. And so I think that it's a critical component to ensure that we are cultivating a curious population as a part of this lifelong learning focus, but also ensuring that it connects up to opportunity to apply those ideas overall in whatever capacity somebody may need. And as a part of that curriculum, then the state is working to be able to help with some school corporations that are trying to figure out how do we have access to the teachers that we need, whether it is attracting a new teacher to that school corporation, that school, or providing an existing teacher with a development opportunity to be able to learn some of the curriculum that needs to be provided through the computer science courses, and working with all the schools to be able to find out what's going to be the best fit for them, and working alongside them so that then we are providing the greatest opportunity for those students to be able to step into a thriving career path, a thriving environment for themselves and their families for years to come, as we see technology and those skills that are developed through a computer science class becoming more and more necessary overall.
Okay. I think we have a few minutes for questions. I don't know if we have some microphones up here. If anyone has a thought, a feeling, a comment they'd like to share with the panel, or have all of your questions been answered, which would be wonderful.
We've solved everything.
Everything is solved.
That's the way we like it.
Okay. Yes, take a look at the chart. It's all up there. Thanks everyone for coming. If we don't have any questions, have a great rest of the day. We have a question. Oh, I'm so sorry. We have a question.
So thank you for being here, and a lot of information, very good and helpful, that kind of goes along with my question. One of the things being, I'm glad to hear that we're looking at younger ages. So, because especially, I work in the College of Engineering recruiting future students. And we're seeing that students in 7th grade really need to make their math and science choices in order to be even able to apply to engineering anymore. So I'm glad to hear they're getting to explore earlier. On the other side is a little more personal to me, because my husband, who's a combat veteran, recently graduated from Purdue with his master's degree and was unable to get a job. He was unemployed for a year before he had to take a job stocking shelves. And that was really hard for us. So, and one of the things is that we had a friend who is a VP of a company here locally, and he told me, we're looking for the traditional students, not the non-traditional. And so what can be done to help as adults start getting this extra experience, start getting that extra education, in order to open those doors of opportunity within the corporations themselves?
Well, I first of all, thank you for your husband's service to our country. And can you just tell me quickly what his degree was in?
His master's was organizational leadership.
Okay. Well, I have to tell you, I don't know who that VP was. I personally have never heard a VP say that. In fact, they talk about people from the military and the skills they develop in the military and to go back to school. That's some of the people that traditionally I think that people are looking for, and so that does seem very unusual. In fact, through Greater Lafayette Commerce, as we've been recruiting, because we're trying to grow in this community by 25,000 people by 2026, we literally took our hiring processes on the road to military bases, where we specifically went to recruit military people that were leaving the military for jobs, and we had several employers that were participating with us. So, I mean, if you'd like at some point privately to send me a little more information or something, I'd certainly be willing to look at that, because that is an unusual situation and not one that I have heard occurring. But we'd certainly want to look into that for you and see how we could open those doors.
And to that point, military service, when you look at a resume, is usually one of those hot button.
I mean, that's who we, at
That's
the
who we
police department,
prefer.
that's who we look for hiring
Exactly.
and stuff, yeah.
And Tony and I, if you didn't know, we served together as police officers. And when you realize they have the discipline, they understand the chain of command, they take direction well, they're creative, they're inventive, and they're loyal, and you're going to get a long-term employee, it's astounding to think that.
Sometimes his resume gets through, but once he gets to the face-to-face, they see he's in his 50s. And
Well,
it seems like that's where we get cut. I know.
50s are your best time.
You know, and ironically that you would say that, you know, because I've just heard from some employers that age does not bother them. If they think they find somebody that will give them at least another 10 years, which would just put him in his early 60s, and that doesn't sound old anymore.
Not anymore.
So they have no problem with that. So I really would like a little additional information to see somewhere where that got held up in the process.
Yeah, I think there's something we can do.
Thank you very much.
You mayors keep working on that quality of life, because, Ms. Milo, I'm about to tell you something completely different. I'm a 40-year veteran in Indiana, and at one employer I was confronted with a loyalty oath. I declined.
Loyalty oath.
Loyalty oath. Now, it wasn't a sheet of paper that I had to sign on a dotted line. But I declined, and of course I lost my job. And there's a long story in front of that with that particular employer. But I want you to know that some things can happen in Indiana, and they're not all that rosy. And so that's as much as I'll say here today.
Well, thank you, Tom, and I'm sorry that that happened, but workers have rights, and Indiana generally supports.
With this employer, it was his way or the highway.
Got it.
That's how bad it was.
All right.
And I was shown the highway. It was all done very politely, and that particular man kept his hands clean. He had somebody else do that particular work, but it was his way or the highway.
Thank you for sharing your story, Tom.
Do we have any other questions? Okay.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.